I am unashamed. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was nice, and then like the next day, it was summer.
We just missed spring.
Yeah, just it was terrible.
I mean, Phil caught the ops, but that was only a couple weeks. Usually, it lasts longer than that. It's like
I've got one net at an old set. It all rhymes, which is a sure bet.
one net with an old set.
It's a sure
One
bet.
One net, old set, meaning I dropped a truck head with a rope tied on it, nylon, and doesn't rot.
How many years ago?
Thank the Almighty that whoever developed a nylon, it crossed a great threshold. I remember when we didn't have nylon.
Does it have 3 strands or 2?
3 strands.
You know where they got that idea, don't you?
Ecclesiastes.
Typical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just go out there and I check it. It's a sure bet. I know I'm going to have them. The question is just how many. Well, I raised my little net up. That's about a net about like that, not real big.
Looks
For
like
those of you listening, it's about a hula hoop.
About a hula hoop.
About 3 feet.
And I felt them surge a little bit. I felt something. I told Dan, I said, Dan, this thing is loaded. He said, "You think?" I said, "I think so."
So is Dan your muscle, or are you doing still?
You were raising it?
No, Dan just watching. He's spurring me on. He said, I hope I have muscles like that when I'm your age. I said, well,
Dad, he's doing to you what you used to do to us.
Yeah, but Al, if you don't, it doesn't matter how many muscles you have. If you don't know the technique of raising a hoop net,
right, it's all about.
You will literally bust it apart.
All in the technique.
Yeah.
All in the technique. But anyway, I looked down there when I got up and I could see what was in the net. Of course, I could tell back in the back there was no scum or anything on the strings.
So that meant
I could tell they'd bumped it, kept it net clean. Well, I looked down in there and I counted them. I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I said, Dan, I have 8. 3 of them are about 15 pounds apiece.
Ooh.
So that was 50 pounds. On 3 of them, it's about like that.
3 feet long.
I dumped them in the bottom of the boat. I hand-picked 2 3.5, 4-pounders.
Perfect.
And I said,
perfect eaters.
I said, get on the phone and see if you reach anybody that wants some Opelousas cat.
Well, he didn't do that because if he'd called me, I'd have come and got him.
I told him, I said, get on the phone, get him. Chad Johnson, his phone wouldn't work. He called around. I said, I was pouring a little water when he was making the calls. I was pouring a little water on him to keep him wet, So I said, well, they go back to the river. They're in luck. That's the first time I've ever thrown Opelousas catfish
I couldn't
back
believe
in the water.
When you told me that Saturday, I was in shock. I was like, are we really living that well that we just turn ops back in the river? I was like, you talking about a charmed life.
I've been eating them Opelousas. They're running in May. They spawn in May, so that's why I'm catching so many. And their old set was always Old Faithful, one of the best sets we ever had. But I just said, well, I don't mind dressing them for someone else, but I mean, who can we give them to there, Dan? So we tried to get a hold of somebody.
You did try. You made the attempt, but they didn't call you, did they?
I just reached and got them, and I just set them down outside the boat, and they just went on their way.
In their way.
I took the 2, cleaned them. I'm having them today.
So now that's over.
Yeah.
We're finishing up on them 2 today. So
but you'll have a few more in there probably because I
already have some more.
Yeah. Jace, you might want to give the old Dan a text and say.
Yeah, there's some more. You still got the net out?
Yeah.
Well, I may just go run it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We'll go run it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when June gets here, it's over.
Yeah.
And
it's so good to eat. I mean, they really are a good tasting fish.
Well, when we were growing up, we talked about this on a previous podcast. We think about May as Mayhaw month, but May was also the best time to catch Opelousas catfish.
Yep. Right.
And so really the month of May, and you got out of school. So I don't know that there was a better month growing up than the month of May.
That's when the fruit of the outdoors seemed to really come to fruition.
Yeah. The river is just right.
Oh, speaking out of getting out of school, I had this weekend my last natural child that my wife and I have. She's graduating.
You can't really say you have a broad range of children now.
Well, we're trying to be the United Nations amongst So, it was a strange response because Missy seemed happy about it.
You have African American. You have Hispanic.
When you combine us all, yeah, we are the United
Yes,
Nations.
UN.
So I
By the way, within our family structure, it's all of them. Asian.
We pretty much got the world covered.
Yeah.
what I was gonna say is, so I got a little emotional about it because I thought, man, this is it. This is, Miss Mia's graduating high school. She's going to college, got a scholarship. I'm super proud of her. She's doing awesome.
How'd she get a scholarship?
And,
Brain power?
Smart. Yeah. And plays as many instruments, I guess. I'm not sure the specifics of it, but I'm sure I should know that. But yeah, she's happy and proud. So they had a graduation thing. They did a little worship service, and she plays I don't know what that thing's called.
Keyboard.
It's like, yeah, the keyboard. And that was awesome. They kind of did it for the youth there.
Yep.
So then they had a parade. I was like, what? Well, she asked me to drive her in the parade. And so you remember the vehicle that I bought Missy?
The VW?
In our little duck show.
Yep.
What was that, 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a while.
People probably thought, oh, yeah, that really didn't happen. Oh, yeah, I bought her a car. I think it was for
her birthday.
her
I
birthday.
think it was a birthday.
Well, we still have that car.
Yeah.
It's a Beetle.
Volkswagen, yeah. But
Do they call it
convertible,
a
right?
Beetle? Yeah, it's a convertible. Yeah. And look, I don't know. I think I paid $7,000-8,000 for it, and people have asked. They've offered me like up to $20,000 for it, and that now. And I'm like, babe, she's like, no, we're not selling that car. But the only problem with it is if something goes wrong, getting parts for it's difficult.
What brand is it? What?
It's a Volkswagen. German.
And
Those Germans can build some cars now.
I used to own a Volkswagen.
Yeah, Mom had one. You remember that old white one she had?
well, yeah, oh yeah. Well, Mom was there last night, and she's like, I used to have one of these. I said, okay, I remember. She said, but it wasn't as nice as this.
The floor rusted out, so when you'd be driving, you'd see the road down going underneath.
You wouldn't want to slip.
You wouldn't want that foot to go down.
I know. We called it an open spitoon. But
she turned in one time. She turned in tight, and somebody just went, was hanging on that door out, and then swung back. I think.
Well, what's so funny is because Missy, twice a year they'll let the top down and ride around in the convertible, but in Louisiana, you're like. Oh. In between the pollen and the bugs. Right. I mean, right now, I don't know what these little black bugs are.
They call them love bugs. They're usually
they're in love.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. There's tens of thousands of them.
They're mating
from every conceivable angle.
The front of your car just looks like or truck just as a black.
This is where love ended for those. I mean, there's nothing you can do.
That's right.
There's some people, even in our world, that they can't even drive down the road. They wouldn't be able to drive down the road,
right? Because
they wouldn't want to, kill a bug. Well, you can't live here then.
That's right.
So
and if you put that top down, you're going to have a mouthful of them.
Yeah, so we had the parade, but I thought it was really good. I mean, the church members lined the streets up. I mean, you would think this is kind of like I heard Mia say. You would think this is kind of juvenile, but this is so much fun. I mean, she loved that. So the graduate,
everybody loves a parade.
They sit on the, like they have their feet in the back seat if you had a convertible. Of course, some of them had the trailers.
Well, in the old days, Dad, that's what they did. In your day, that's what they did at like homecoming, right? The gals would sit up on. They don't really do that anymore. I don't guess.
Well, that's what they did for this.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people there, and they were cheering, and it just makes them. Because, I had a buddy one time tell me, he's like, well, you never should celebrate your kid doing something that they were supposed to do. So I thought, that may be a little harsh, He's like, well, they're supposed to graduate high school. Why are you celebrating? I'm like, so I'm somewhere in between the two. Yeah, you're supposed to do that. Do your job. Act like you've been there before. But
you think about it, though. It is, and you're right. I mean, it's expected, but it's an amazing accomplishment because you start to school, and nowadays, you're like, they start 3 or 4 years old. into these preschools and all that. And I mean, that's your whole life up until that point.
But you know what I like? They
I
celebrated.
didn't go to my college celebration, but the whole bunch got food poisoning, and they said, "How did you know to stay away from there?" I said, "I just had a feeling."
Yeah, but this
Dad, it's not hard for you to stay away from
Hey,
anything.
this was God sanctioned. They had a service. They had a powerful message toward them. I mean, like, here's the 6 things you need to do at your next venture. And it was
good.
like, carry your Bible. You know, I mean, it was all focus on Jesus. I mean, that was number one. I loved everything about it. Then they gave them a Bible as a gift and a devotional book.
In the grand scheme of things,
like
based
it.
on what's going on in these United States, I still say I don't see the downside of portraying Jesus, following Jesus in every aspect of your life. I don't see the downside. Love God, love your neighbor.
Exactly.
Where's the downside? Oh, you bunch of Bible thumpers. I'm like, yes, we are thumping our Bibles. We sure are. We're getting information out of it. Love God, love your neighbor, you know.
But I like it when
You
churches.
got lists of sins.
Well,
We know what to stay away from and what to embrace. So
I like it when churches take an active role in
Yep.
transitions
need more of it.
Yep.
of your life.
Right.
And they're like, and it was great. It
Yep.
was fun. Because, you know, it's hard to please our young people. I mean, they're so addicted to their phones and all. It's just hard to do something that they think is fun. So it hit me on that. I thought, these people are all in their rooms, you know, looking at their phones all the time. Just a little parade in the parking lot. It was fun. It was just so many people there. We were interacting, and
The very opposite. The very opposite of going around doing what y'all were doing and being mad. Most of these groups these days are all gathering together to show you how mad they
A
are.
lot of anger,
What you saw were people who were
joy.
being glad.
Yeah.
I know.
You can have a whole culture full of the glad or a whole culture full of the mad. I would think people would say, let's go with the glad crowd.
You know what? One of the funny things I noticed
Give me a break.
is when I blew the horn on that little bug, it's like they made a horn that didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
That's right.
You know, most horns are like, "Bah." This one's like,
Meet me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like the old Roadrunner. Remember the Roadrunner be running from wide? Meep. That's what it sounds
So
like.
every time I'd blow it, people just started laughing on both sides. It was funny. I thought, are we doing
And then
this?
once you did it and got some laughs, you just couldn't stop.
I
Could you?
didn't stop. I blew that horn 100 times. People are so sensitive in our culture. But I was going to say about the weather, it was an awesome night for it. And but that's the time when it gets into summer, which it's supposedly not summer yet.
Yeah, but it's here.
But right
But
at
when
dark,
when that heat breaks, it's,
well, right,
it's so
it's
good.
because it was hot. When
I
we
think
first
it's
went out.
contrary to what you said, your buddy said about, that's what they're supposed to do. I don't see anything detrimental about giving credit where it's due when a bunch of teenagers have finally graduated from high school, which these days, that's
Well, exactly.
that's a good thing.
Oh,
I mean,
exactly. I think it shows.
I think maybe that needs celebrating more in America there.
But you were talking about being addicted to the phone. Let's take a break. So, Jace, we got a brand new supporter for the podcast, and I think you're really going to like these guys because they're into treasure.
Oh, I like it. Tell me more, Al.
So, as inflation is higher than it's been in 40 years, the value of the dollar is decreasing with every passing day. You're paying more at the pump. You're paying more at the grocery store, housing. So paper money is worth less. A company called Bullion Max, and it is a direct-to-consumer precious metals retailer. And so you can diversify with some gold and silver. I talked to these folks on the phone. Man, I love the idea how simple and easy it is. I will be buying some. I'm going to get into it and start out with some silver. They're owned by veterans that are in this precious metal space, so we like that. And they make it very easy, directly to your house. It's insured. So, these people now steal packages and all that. It's insured all the way till it gets to you. And you can get their Bullion Max Silver Starter Kit at the employee pricing. So you can get a really good deal if you go there now. Bullion, Bullion Max, max.com/unashamed. This initial kit, which is what I'm going to buy, has 5 of the most desirable silver products to invest in. They've got a silver American eagle, Jace, and an Australian kangaroo. It's made out of silver. So the offer is limited to just one per household. So get yours now. bullionmax.com/unashamed. Check them out. I heard an interesting discussion. So my youngest daughter is talking to her children who we're always having to, get off the device, because, they're just like from young age, they know how to go place to the stuff on there. And so one of them was asking her, because they got this end of year stuff, like everything, but with them, it's a transition flight from, to first grade or whatever. So there's this thing coming up. And so I was kind of hoping they would film it. But so I hear Doc talking to his mama, and he's like, can you film the whole thing? And she's like, no, absolutely not. She said, I'm sick of it. Every time I go to something, everybody's got their phones up. You can't even enjoy the moment because everybody's filming the moment. And so you can't even see. And so it was interesting hearing her discussion. This is a problem I couldn't relate to. And she's like, we need to enjoy doing it. We're not going to spend the whole time.
You're not going to win that argument with them.
I know. She's trying, to like keep them from being so addicted.
So how are you going to, y'all are the ones, because
it's not even us.
I'm
it's
looking
our
at the
kids.
level y'all are on. Y'all are my sons. Well, now that's the grandchildren come from them and the different varieties that y'all have adopted. So how do you keep from going down the slippery slope to embracing all this crap that you see our culture is throwing at us?
Well,
that's a technical term.
Yeah, I think that's a Greek term.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it sounded to me like she's trying to fight the machine, but it's not.
Are they
easy.
all in Christian schools, all of our grandchildren through y'all?
No, actually, 3 of mine are in public school. 3 in our Christian school and 3 are in public school. But, around here, the public school system is still pretty solid and sound. I don't know if that'll always last, but, it's not as bad, at least at the younger.
And you have some in homeschool.
I wouldn't send them to these indoctrination centers.
Well, for sure, at the college level, you got to be super careful these days because people send their kids off.
If you're waiting on, I wonder what Dad would think about this. I would say if it's a bunch of filth being put out there on 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, I wouldn't take them there. I just wouldn't take them. Whatever it took, I would borrow the money if I had to. Right. But y'all don't need to do that. Y'all have the ability to send them to where they're not indoctrinated.
Well, that's why there's so many people homeschooling now. So,
which I get it. There's some, but again, a lot of it is what state you live in. Which, by the way, that's the framers I would educate them at home before I sent them into this maze of. Well, it's depending on where you are, the SAC, right? Of course, we got a lot of listeners out there. You're living in states. Some of these states. Man, it'd be tough to be there. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, live free or die. We had a family move here from New Jersey, and they were just like, we were tired of being under tyranny. Yeah. So I get it. So, Jace, on the last podcast that we did, Colossians, Dad talked about, remember you did the thing about the names, the different names out of the first couple of verses? Yep. We went through that. Yeah. So one of them.
The bedrock is laid down in all these epistles before he gets into what he's going to talk to him about. The gospel is centerpiece.
Right.
Well, what did we do? We did saints, holy people, faithful, disciples, followers. So that was some of them.
And then there was another one that Dad brought up, and so I've got an update. So I made myself a note this weekend. Remember, Dad talked about ambassadors, which we got from 2 Corinthians,
and brethren was another.
So you and I posited a theory about. You said something about ambassador reels, and
did you look into that?
So I looked into it.
Okay.
I looked into ambassador.
Breaking news. Al has done some
breaking
research.
News, did a little research, and this really was interesting to me.
Have we taken a break yet?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So ambassador, the English word, which is spelled Ambassador, but the ambassador reel is actually the French spelling, same word, but French, which ends in DEUR. That's the ambassador. Ambassadeur. So, with the word, catch this, Chase, the French word means a man on a mission.
Are you kidding me?
That's what it means. Ambassador.
A man on a mission doing some fishing.
So doing some fishing. There you go. There's your rhyme. So this, did you know that Ambassador reels are made by a Swedish company?
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I just always assumed they were built in the U.S. They're not. The company was founded in 1921. So it's over 100 years old. And it originally, they manufactured pocket watches, telephone timers, whatever that means, and taxi meters.
Telephone timers.
Telephone timers.
What is that?
I don't know.
I don't know either, but they were building them in 1921. So this man named Borgström is the founder of this, and it was a watchmaking factory. So World War II comes along, and all of a sudden the demand goes down because the war's going on for what he was manufacturing. So he was such a engineer. He started making fishing reels, and the first one was made in 1941.
Huh.
5 years before you were born, Dad.
Yep.
And it's called the Abu Garcia fishing reel. The first Ambassador reel.
I remember them.
The first Ambassador reel was 1952.
I have some of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they unveiled it at the New York World's Fair in 1954.
You made your cast, and you to keep it from backlashing, you had applied just a little bit of pressure on with your thumb because it was a closed face, we called them. Open face was you'd open it up this way and then throw it, and it would come off
the click bell, right?
Yeah, it'd come off like this, like wire coming out of a
if you didn't keep a little pressure
but
on
Ambassador, the whole thing turned. It was like on a drum.
Yeah.
And you'd thumb it a little bit to just feather it, and you could loosen it up a little bit. But we liked Ambassador reels. We all got us one.
Well, you remember they were very precision reels. I guess they still are.
Very much so.
So I'm sure people that do a lot of fishing, this is not news to you.
They didn't tear up easily.
No.
They were well built.
Swedish engineering.
Well,
Watchmakers is where it all started. But I did like that, Jace. I thought you'd like that. A man on a mission.
I love it.
Which is pretty good, which is what we were talking about Ambassador.
I looked it up in the encyclopedia. It said Ambassador. It had several words there, but one of them was messenger. Messenger from someone else, from higher authority.
Right.
You were a messenger.
Yeah.
And with us, we have the ministry through that label of reconciliation to God. Reality is found in Christ. We're showing them reality.
Yeah.
That's Colossians 2, verse 17. Which is a great verse. I did a little word study on reality, and that's quite interesting. On Jesus himself being the only reality there is. There's the Creator in a human form. And all these, the way the Apostle Paul did it, don't let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink. People get into this food stuff like they do under the law of Moses. Or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, Sabbath day, they were finding things to celebrate that didn't amount to a hill of beans.
Right.
Because he said, look, the reality is found in Jesus, who he is, what he's done, what he's now doing, what he will do.
Right.
You need to keep that focus. Don't get off on all this stuff. On one day is more sacred than another day. Don't do that.
Well, like we don't have enough.
But America still does it to this day.
Like we don't have enough dividing
I was
stuff.
trying to figure out what this telephone timer was. The only thing I found was an hourglass hooked up on the telephone.
Well, that can't be it.
It's 3 minutes.
Well, it was from 1921, so whatever it was, we're not even have that anymore. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Somebody in the Unashamed Nation.
I'm seeing a lot of hourglass phones.
Really?
That's what I'm seeing.
Telephone
I mean,
but that doesn't seem like it takes a lot of engineering for that.
well, and some of them don't have the hourglass, but they're timers. You know how you just click like basically the stopwatch.
That was
back in the deal.
That was in my age, pre-computer.
Well, you can't remember what a telephone timer was? I mean,
I never heard that phrase.
Did you dial it back? I mean, click it.
I wonder if it's because
everything was a party line, and if someone called you, 8 other households were listening to that conversation because they didn't have enough
we had
wire.
that out here.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
because you had to pick up the phone and the Hudsons would be on there. And then usually they would yell at me, yell at us or like.
Yeah, especially the women, get off the phone.
Because we were kids. So, you did what you were told. But I was like, how am I going to know? How do you pick? The only way you can know. And then if you picked it up more than, to check again and see, they got hot.
A lot of this stuff has little stopwatches and it says you could time your telephone call. Like here's a vintage thing that says, a vintage timer from way back in the days of timed telephone calls.
Because you probably paid for it by the time, don't you think?
I think it's something along those lines.
I'm sure that's how they did it at first.
Get to get them off the phone.
When's the last time you, hang on, let's take a break. When was the last time you saw a payphone somewhere?
Oh.
Have you seen one anywhere? I haven't seen one.
Now, where would I be that I would even see one?
Personally, just one man speaking, I think everything was much better, in my opinion, as far as spiritual matters go, Al. I think maybe the old days, 40s, 50s, pre-computer, I think life was more simple. And I think I miss that.
Yeah.
I'm still there, basically.
You never left.
I never left. I just said, I'm sticking with the simple here. If you want to talk to somebody,
well,
yes, what do you have to say? Okay, make it short, because I don't want to sit there and just run on and on and on. Tell me what you want, what you need, what's the reason for the phone call. Tell me, ask me, and then hang it up.
According to most book, movie, and television series, it's all going to go back to there when there's a massive reset when everything collapses. So that's the predictions out there. So the old days may come right on back.
I've been warning them for years, a good decade. I'm telling you, if we just keep at this current pace, with the debt doing what it's doing and all that, your money's not going to be worth anything.
Well, I will say that your parents and you taught us a certain skill set that if it ever got to those in our lifetime, I think we could make do.
Yep.
From the land and,
yep.
I think we could survive.
Well, what's it really worth anyway in the grand scheme of things?
Well, right.
It's just a little
that's
much.
why
High tech is just a little bit much.
We're in Colossians. He's not getting into a whole lot of those issues because, the point is, you have a relationship with the creator of the universe. He starts talking about, when he's talking about riches, it's an inheritance for the saints in verse 12.
Right. Yeah, that's where we left off.
This is beyond your capacity to understand. This is...
Biblically speaking, I feel good about my position. Since you died with Christ, Colossians 2:20, to the basic principles of this world. Now, that's a mouthful. You said the way the world runs, and where all the sin and all the marching and hollering and hooping, why, as though you still belong to it, do you submit to it, the world's rules? Don't handle this, do not taste, do not touch. There are more things going around where don't do this, don't touch that, you can't do that, yeah. It just goes on and on and on. All these regulations have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, false humility, and harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. There's something to be said there. I think I know what he's saying. Just keep life simple, Al. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, well, for sure. And you don't live in fear like so many people do in the world.
And there's no immortality tied to all that. It's just a big bunch of yeah.
Well, I think his point was, which, speaking of simple points, because I look back at the first chapter where we're at, and you're like, well, why is he writing this? He thanked them. It's kind of like, you do in any situation. If you want to encourage somebody or you want to challenge somebody or hold them accountable, no matter what you want to do, you want to start off being positive. So, you're like, look, I really love you. You got a lot of faith and hope, and I've heard about all these things. Now, when he gets to, and he said, and I'm praying for you, which that can mean I'm praying for you, but it also means there's something.
I'm aware.
Yeah, there's something to be praying about.
I like the way he put it, though. From when I first met you, I haven't stopped praying for you.
Since the day you heard it.
That's right.
Talking about the gospel,
Exactly.
the bedrock.
That I've been praying about this. So you're right, Jase. It shows you his concern.
He was concerned, and I'm not making light of it.
No.
I'm just saying the next time somebody says they're praying for you, they might have sniffed out you got something you need to focus on and change. Because he says in verse 10, which I think is the point of why he's writing, he says, we pray this in order that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and may please him in every way.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the simple truth. All this stuff was written, and they had people trying to promote the basic principles of the world and the worship of angels. He
still
mentions
going on.
that, yeah, and worshiping other gods that were not the true God. And so, but he says, "Look, I'm just trying to get you to live a life worthy of the Lord, pleasing Him in every way." So then the section where he introduces, it's almost like a song or a pause.
That's the way I looked at it, like a song.
In Colossians 1:15 through.
We're really all the way through 2:5, but because that next section, but especially 15 through 23. It's like
it's like a whoa. I mean, to me, there's a couple of other passages that come to mind like this. Philippians 2:5 through the end of the chapter there, same way. That's, where the one that says Jesus humbled himself and became obedient. And it ends up saying that every knee shall bow.
Right.
So, and John 1, same
that.
thing. It's this image of Jesus being portrayed in a powerful way.
Romans 5 through 8, same thing.
Yeah. And so you got to have this one in the top 5 because a lot of people, I mean, we already introduced this, but when you think about what is so different from Jesus than every other religious leader or every other person? And it really comes down to that, him saying there's a God and I'm him.
Yep.
Here Paul says he is the image of the invisible God.
Right.
But it's more complicated, I guess, than it's just him, because there's been multiple people claim they're some sort of God. But I have a father, there's a spirit, I became flesh for you. I mean, that's what he's portraying.
So what he does in this section, Jase, to your point, and I viewed it like a song too. It's funny you had that same image. I did too. The first 3 verses are the couple of verses are the heavenly dominion. In other words, before he got here, and then you've got the earthly dominion once he got here, and then you've got our response to it. I mean, that's kind of the song. It's like a song in 3 verses for this section. Is the way I kind of broke it down.
I broke down the word reality from the little text that I mentioned earlier. These are a shadow of the things that were to come, everything that's happened in the past. However, have the reality, however, is found in Christ. I looked up that word reality, what is real, acknowledging the facts about something and thus dispelling unrealistic notions. In other words, the things you get out of the world, it's not real because it doesn't deal with sin or death. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if some kind of teaching does not deal with sin, you'll just see more of it. If the resurrection of the dead, immortality, you have to study enough of the scriptures to realize it's a reality. The resurrection of the dead, it's a reality. It can actually happen. Jesus proved it. Look, I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to live beyond death. Well, there's no one ever that could make that claim. No one.
Nope.
And he pulled it off. So I'm reading it 2,000 years later thinking, I don't think I'm going to get out of here unless I go with this person right here. I don't
Exactly.
think I'm going to get out of here. I mean, it's in stone.
Hang on, let's take a break.
To me, he gives 12 things in a row that you think about Jesus. So if you're considering living a life worthy of the Lord, which all that means is surrendering to him, saying this
Again, it's not your ability to do it, it's your response to it.
exactly.
Yep.
You got, he's the image of the invisible God. That's 15a. You got the firstborn over of all creation, 15b. We need to talk about that, what y'all think that means. Third, the one by whom all things were created. That's in 16. 17, the one who is before all things. 17b, the one who holds all things together.
Sustainer. Yeah.
18, the head of the body. 18b, the beginning. 18c, the firstborn from the dead. We'll talk about that. The one who has the preeminence. That's the last part of 18. You get to 19. All the fullness dwells in him.
And his resurrection was not like Lazarus' resurrection and the ones you saw pre-Jesus.
Well, we'll get into that.
They died again,
Right.
Exactly.
but he didn't. He won't.
Yeah, and look, those two things, I mean, we're just spitting these things out. Well, just to finish my list before we start talking them individually, in 20, he has chosen to reconcile all things to him. And in the second part of 20, he's made peace through his blood on the cross. I mean, there's 12 things he either did or is that separates him as Lord.
Right.
So, because a lot of people are like, well, why Jesus? Y'all just, well, deal with those 12 things. I mean, and have some answers for those issues. And if you can't come up with anybody or anything, I mean, it's not just like it's some made-up guy. I mean, when you look at this list of things, these are quite the boasts.
It's quite the resume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start saying, I am the beginning.
Everybody has a resume. I've never run up on one with this resume, I'll tell you that.
Now, what I like to do, because I'm a simple man, and I've said these three questions many times, because you find those questions here, which is the, how did you get on the earth? What are you doing here? And how are you leaving? Those are I think the three basic questions of humanity. Well, in this paragraph, you see them. When you see verse 16, it says, for by him all things were created. No, I missed it. Where's this for him and by him? Yeah, it's 16, all right. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, thrones, powers, rulers, authorities. All things, this is the phrase I was trying to get to. All things were created by him and for him. Now, that just answered two questions. How did I get here? All things were created by him, and John 1 says the same thing.
Yep.
And for him. So what am I doing here? I'm here for him, to represent him, which goes back to your ambassador.
Right.
And so then the third one, how are you leaving? Well, that's when you get down into the resurrection, where he says he's the firstborn from among the dead. So there's your three questions right here in a nice little bow. The hardest one of those is that by him and for him.
Yeah, while you're there, that's why when you finally get over to chapter 2 and verse 17, the reality, because what people fail to realize is that when they go to the funeral of their loved ones, reality is right in front of them. Death is reality. People die of a host of things, but death is one of the big ones, because when you go to a funeral, you say you are looking at the reality of the world. And the one, if you don't know him, that has conquered that, the resurrection of the dead. We all die. It's a sad time when people say we lost them, they passed away, Death is all around you. It can happen just in a millisecond. You know, you're sitting in church having a meal, and somebody bursts through the door, or somebody just stands up and starts shooting people around them. You're like, reality.
Yeah. Well, think about what he claimed here. In 16, he said that whether thrones or, because you think, what is thrones?
Empires.
One of the
empires.
biggest shows people ever watched was that Game of Thrones. You know, this power and kings and whether it's thrones, powers, rulers, or authorities. Now, is there any other power you can think of? Maybe death, and he addresses that in the next verse. He was the firstborn from among the death, because death is a power.
Yep.
So that in everything he might have the supremacy. So he's claiming, Paul, he wants you to live a life worthy of the Lord. Why? Because he is above all thrones, powers, rulers, authorities, and death.
Yep.
Is there anything else left?
Nothing.
No.
Complete.
I just think that's quite a statement. I mean, when you stop and think about it, it's like, whoa.
With that word fullness, that's where that comes to mind, is because it's all fulfilled in him, everything. Mm-hmm. Everything the scripture pointed to, all the law, all the prophecy, everything in Jesus. Let's take our last break. I was thinking, Jay, as you mentioned John 1 and several other passages, and I thought of Hebrews 1, because the Hebrew writer, it's almost the exact same languaging here. It says, in the past, 1:1, in the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times in various ways, but in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. Same idea. It was made for him and by him. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs.
Yep. That's why over in Romans 2, the way he words it is that every human being, you're storing up wrath if you're stubborn and unrepentant. You're storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed. He's preparing you to tell you the only way out of that. God will give to each person according to what he's done. You say, good or evil. There's a judgment coming. Those who with persistence in doing good seek glory, honor, and immortality, he'll give eternal life. That's what's riding on all this. Same thing in Colossians. But for those who are self-seeking, there's a mighty throng of them that are out there, and who reject the truth. There's the gospel, the bedrock of your salvation, and follow evil. There's going to be wrath and anger. There will be trouble and distress for every human being who does evil, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. But peace, glory, honor, and peace for everyone who does good, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. God doesn't show favoritism. That's the way he worded it going into writing to the Romans. They have a tremendous empire, and he writes to them and tells them this. He says, your life is in the hands of the one who's become flesh, died, was buried, and raised from the dead. That is played out in every one of these epistles, over and over and over and over.
Well, but not only that, he gets so deep here when it says in verse 19, it says, for God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him. He reiterates that in chapter 2 and 9 when it says, in Christ all the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form. That's why he's the image of the invisible God. But they all live there together. But then it says, and through him to reconcile him to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven. That's where you get the statement of he is where heaven and earth meet.
Right.
He's the bridge.
And
Again, another lofty statement.
he's not just a representative of two realms. He's the best of two realms.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best in the heavenly realm, and he's the best in the
Which
earthly.
is why it says he made peace through his blood shed on a cross. So, which the inference there is we're at war with him because of our sin.
Yep.
He made peace. We didn't.
That's right.
We were alienated from God. That's in 21. We did that, not him. When we were born, we were perfectly fine. And then what happened? We removed ourselves from the holiness of God.
Right.
It's called sin. Then we were enemies in our minds because of our evil behavior.
Lots of that going on.
What we write off is just, man, I cannot figure out what is wrong with these junior high and these teenagers. Well, you become an enemy at that point. We all do it.
Right.
And you see it in their attitude, and there's an independence that's developing, and you're warring with your creator.
Yep.
And just like we did, and just like the people continue to do, we alienate ourselves. But you look at all this good news, and you see the building blocks to forgiveness, grace, justification, and redemption through this reconciliation process. You just think it all starts with forgiveness, because there's that peace on the cross, and that leads to understanding what grace is, which is basically God's love for us without our merits. I mean, that's why I think Paul
kind of
was
choose this day on whom you're going to adhere to. Choose this day whether to be God or the evil one.
Well, I think that's why he first set him up above all powers, because he's above human power, because your power can't produce forgiveness, grace, justification. You can't. Once you make a mistake, it was made. You deal with it. And he's like, I'm going to make peace through shedding my blood, because we know all this stuff trickles down. The reason I'm able to forgive is because I understand God's forgiveness. I mean, the reason I can show grace to people is I understand God's grace. And I mean, people can have small samples of this, but if you want a complete transformation, that God's grace, it then teaches me to do these things that are good. That was his setup. And then the justification is him saying you're not guilty, even though you're guilty. I mean, that's pretty powerful.
Yep.
And then you get to redemption, which is then the freedom, which is what everybody's looking for. People just want to be free.
Right.
But that truly is how you're free from yourself and your sin and from death because of what he did here.
Yeah, and it people have a hard time understanding justification, but really, it's a pretty simple concept. If somebody you know broke the law and they got a fine, and then they had to pay that fine, or they were going to, get in trouble, go to jail, whatever, and you went down to the courthouse and said, you know what, I'm going to pay your fine for you. Just out of the goodness of my heart, I'm going to extend you some grace because I know you don't have any money.
Yep.
Then you would be in a right relationship with the state of Louisiana. Well, that's exactly what Jesus did for us.
That is correct.
There was a fine for our sin, and he paid it.
Yeah.
The wages of sin.
Wages of sin is death. That's what you earn.
Yep.
But he says, I'll pay it by my own death.
Yep.
Because I'm the exact representation of God. What's even more interesting, Jace, is the Holy Spirit, the return for us, the deposit when he left is, I'm going to put a little bit of that in each and every one of you.
Yep.
So you'll have a glimpse of what it's like.
Imperishable seed.
Exactly. Given to us as a deposit, guaranteeing our inheritance.
What's to come.
What's to come, which is a really powerful when you look at this whole thing about the Godhead from the beginning to now.
Oh, it's by far the greatest story ever told, boys.
Well, and it wasn't like he didn't predict it. I mean, I thought about the Isaiah 9:6 when he was predicting Jesus coming to earth. He said, he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Because a lot of people have trouble wrapping their head that in Jesus, the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form.
Right.
But you also remember in Matthew 1:23 when they called him Emmanuel, which means what? God is
with us.
I mean, he brought his counseling abilities, the Holy Spirit. He's bringing this mighty Father. He's the Prince of Peace. He's making peace. He's bringing people back to God, but he's bringing everything back to God. I mean, that was the plan all along. It's just a matter of, your response to it. I mean, there's nothing changed since he wrote this letter.
No.
I mean, the false teaching might have changed, the distractions on our earth has changed, but it's the same sin. It's the same war with God, and it's the same grace offered.
You're exactly right. It made me think of Hebrews 10, but I'll read that in the overtime. We're out of time. Remember, if you want to cross over and check out overtime, we have used about 15 minutes more on this topic, and you can do that by blazetv.com/unashamed.
By the way, I baptized one yesterday. I didn't baptize him. I had the artist baptize him, but he came all the way up because of what he saw and heard on the podcast. He said, my wife and I have driven all the way up here. I need to be born again.
New birth. I love it. All right, we'll see you in the overtime.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.